It is Tuesday evening on this 26th of February out across Port Hedland, Western Australia, and we are now less than 24 hours away from seeing the center of soon-to-be severe Category 4 Cyclone Rusty making landfall between Port Hedland and Pardue Station. This is exactly what the forecast is calling for from the Bureau of Meteorology. The center should pass or cross the coast sometime Wednesday afternoon. However, the overall circulation of the storm remains fairly massive, and destructive winds are already lashing the coastline. With landfall less than a day away, naturally we are seeing much better agreement with the latest forecast tracks of both the Bureau of Meteorology and the U.S. Joint Typhoon Warning Center. The JTWC is also taking the center of the storm just to the east of Port Hedland, which is fairly good news for the port city because that would allow some of the higher storm surge values to remain just to the east. But due to the close proximity of the western eye wall, you are still likely to face very destructive winds over the next 24 to 48 hours. In addition, any slight wobble to the west in terms of the motion of the tropical cyclone could bring the center directly over Port Hedland, so this is still going to be a concern up until the time the center makes landfall due to the erratic steering currents that are currently in place. This afternoon and evening's visible satellite animation reveals that the tropical cyclone is still strengthening and organizing, and this is most apparent with the eye becoming less cloud-filled with time. The enhanced infrared animation reveals that the eye is still somewhat ragged, however still improving over time, and we have intense convective spiral bands wrapping around the inner core. As we turn to the water vapor imagery, we see a lot of dry air to the southwest, which is unfavorable for tropical cyclones, but with the vertical wind shear values remaining very light directly over top the tropical cyclone, the dry air is unlikely to entrain into the center until the storm moves well inland, and then at that point the center will be greatly disrupted by topographical effects. We can also make out the very favorable mid to upper level atmospheric pattern that the tropical cyclone is underneath, because we have the poleward outflow channel really beginning to expand over the Australian continent, and we still have a favorable equatorward outflow channel to the north. So this is a sign that the tropical cyclone is very well ventilated, thus allowing more convection to continue to develop. Also, we can see the steering pattern continuing to evolve, with more troughiness coming into southwest Australia, and this is the trough that is likely to bring the center of circulation into the coastline within the next 24 to 36 hours. Here is another view of the mid-level steering pattern, and we can see two mid-level steering ridges, one that is currently more so towards the top end in Queensland. We also have another ridge out across the southeast Indian Ocean, but right in between we have a weakness between those ridges, and that is in the form of this trough going through the Australian Bight, and that is allowing the storm to take a dip more so toward the south, especially as it continues to deepen more so over the next 12 to 24 hours. All of the models are now in unanimous agreement with regards to the pattern evolution over the next 24 to 48 hours. So here's a look at the American GFS, and as we go into 12 hours we can still see the center of Tropical Cyclone Rusty just to the north of the coastline, but the trough is continuing to strengthen and push more toward the north over the next day or so, and this trough is going to be just strong and amplified enough to push the center of the cyclone inland, and once it starts to move more southerly, it should continue to press more toward the south and significantly and quickly weaken over western Australia. All that being said, the overall motion of the tropical cyclone will still be relatively slow over the next 24 to 36 hours, so areas right along the coastline near Pardue Station and Port Hedland can still expect up to 300 to 500 additional millimeters of rainfall, and that is on top of what has already transpired from this event, and you can see the remnants of the tropical cyclone along with all of its precipitation continuing to move southward over the next 3 to 5 days. We are going to quickly wrap up this video with a quick look at the Port Hedland radar animation, as I know several people tuning in from Port Hedland are likely on the verge of losing power. So I'm going to really emphasize that the strongest winds associated with the tropical cyclone can be found in this convective ring surrounding the eye. This is known as the eye wall, and the southern eye wall is now starting to lash the coast, and the winds are only going to go up further as we go later on into the overnight and into Wednesday morning. So if you happen to be outdoors, now is the time to seek shelter immediately, and if you are indoors, be prepared to stay indoors for at least another 12 to 24 hours, because even if you get into the eye, you may receive a temporary break, but as soon as that second half of the system comes in, the winds could dramatically increase within just a very short period of time, and you will still have to go through the second or northern semicircle of the tropical cyclone. So this is going to be a long duration event, and just hang in there. As long as you've made your proper evacuations away from the immediate coastal areas and you're in a well-structured location, you should be perfectly okay. Now, we're also still very concerned about the storm surge near and just to the east of where the center is making landfall. Since this is a very slow-moving storm, as we've talked about on numerous occasions, we are probably seeing very significant water pileup already along the coast. And the highest storm surge values are likely going to be found just to the northwest of Pardue, where we have this concave portion of the coastline, and that is only going to exacerbate the storm surge levels. So that's all for now, but if you do happen to maintain internet service, you can always check us out at facebook.com/28storms as well, where we are posting frequent updates and new Storm Chaser video as it becomes available.